before you come in, and then most of the time they are dynamic systems. They are not like natural systems. So we said meritocracy is the key, right? If you have a society in which people get things according to who they are or who they know, obviously your system is not meritocratic, and any foreign investor who that comes in is usually put off by 10%. Give me 10%, and a small cut bit, right? Not 10%. Or 10% or what is a foreign direct investment fund? Tubabo bala kodo na tele nyadile adundi bango kan. Na futata gunda folomento na ko konko eka 10%. Konko $1,000. It cannot. My friend here is. I had a small chat with him, and he's an investor, and he will tell you, I'm an entrepreneur, right? Even though I'm not a foreign direct investor, but I've been in other countries. It is very frustrating. So, to get your people coming to invest in your country, you must clean up your system. You must have a system in which people can access information. People can be able to register their businesses, right, without any problems. People can be able to do transactions with minimum amount of cost and time. It has to be efficient. To make a government efficient, I stated by mentioning a number of things. For example, information in our government is lacking. They cannot even tell you how many staff they have in the civil service or public service, not to talk about how many citizens they are there. Data is very, very lacking. And e-government, another point, one more minute. Another point, Mr. Drame, is Mr. Soto, Nobel Prize winning author, and he's an economist. He said that if you want to remove poverty, one of the key things you have to do is look at the land of the country. In this country here, only Banjul and Serakunda, Brikama have got a lease land. What is the problem? What is a lease? Is just a paper. Why can't we lease the whole country? If you don't lease the guy who is in Janjambure or URD, you don't lease his land, he cannot even borrow $1,000 from the bank. Because the bank tells him, I need a lease document. So what's the problem with the lease document? It's just a piece of paper. Why can't they give everybody, just like an ID card, lease every land in this country? If you don't lease in America, in England, in Europe, they lease every single inch of those countries that are 1,000 times bigger than Gambia. Every single piece of land in Ohio or New York is leased. A farmer in Ohio can borrow money just like a flat owner in New York. What about Gambia? People have 10,000 acres in Kiang and they can't do nothing about it. They will remain poor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I let you go on a little bit longer than you should because you were making a valid point and we will agree. But we'll give the same opportunity to all of the participants here if they are on the same trajectory, naturally. Mr. Day, before we hand over to the journalists here to ask questions in relation to presentations so far made in the last hour, would you agree that corruption is the biggest economic challenge of this country? Yes or no, and why?
Actually, I would agree. And we all know where corruption stems from. You know, Gambia is literally a poor country, and everybody is on the survival mode. And the same officials who made it to the top, you know, are the same individuals, you know, who are on the lower rung of the ladder. So obviously, if they see themselves on top of the ladder, you know, definitely they will survive. You know, like in Wolof, you know, definitely you know, and if you see survival, you know, obviously you will be corrupt. You know, I will definitely agree. And we have a lot of things that are affecting us, you know, other than corruption, you know, politics, you know, and a high level of destruction, you know, from focusing on focusing on the job to be done. You know, because when you look at recently, you know, before the current president, you know, set up a political party, you know, shortly after he set up the political party that he's running now, that was when the country, you know, started going deep down the drain. You know, because at the end of the day, it distracts him, you know, from his responsibilities, you know, in office. So we have a whole variety of issues that are really affecting us. And it's a pity, Haruna. I will go back to COVID-19. We are about to encounter a global crisis that if you don't put our acts together, the country will witness something very drastic. So I think we should really focus, on the job to be done, to get the country, from the level that it is, psycho-emotionally, economically and socially. So that's my point.
Thank you so much. Abla Jawa is here with 2 microphones. We will go around. If any reporters, journalists, presenters, any media house has any questions, we will change the rules slightly. We used to say you must specifically ask a specific person a question, but let any reporter, any journalist ask any participant any question, and we will guide their responses. Ask a direct question, introduce yourself, your media house, and shoot a question directly to any of them. Anybody with questions, or you rather we wait to the end entirely? Before we go, is your hand up? Okay, there's somebody here. Okay, then, go ahead, Abla. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
It would be great if you would stand up so we could also see you and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. My name is Alkali Cham. I am independent observer, but I'll use this to ask a question. To ensure economic growth, one very bad element that we need to trim completely is to fight corruption. Corruption is something that is trying to weaken our development as a country. So I want to ask the presidential aspirants, what mechanisms or strategies would you put in place to ensure that this ill practice is completely expunged from our public sector? Thank you.
Who do you want to respond?
Specifically, Mr. Kurang, who is economist. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm also an accountant, and this is a very relevant topic. That's why I said, get me voted, because I'm the only chartered accountant.
You are campaigning, sir. Could we answer the guy?
All right. Now, corruption obviously is a serious problem, because we've seen so many countries with oil, gold, and diamond, and they are still in the doldrums because of corruption. So what do you do to eliminate corruption? I think, obviously, like I said, corruption starts with the president. In the Gambia, everything starts with the president, and the president must admit that we are not electing a party. The constitution gives the mandate not to a party, it gives the mandate to a president. So the ball ends and starts with the president. And people say the first thing you must do to tell us that your hands are clean, declare your assets. That's the beginning. Because if you don't, then there will always be some questions that cannot be answered. How much did you have before you become president? And how much did you have 5 years later? If that question cannot be answered, you cannot eliminate corruption. A president who cannot do that will not be. So corruption, again, is about systems. People talk about systems. I said it in my speech here. Systems are very interesting because you have systems and subsystems. The whole government is a system, but we have got departments, ministries, etc. A system is a combination of things. Transparency is another factor apart from the presidential responsibility and declaration. Transparency, Mr. Drame. A transparent government. How much do we are very glad to welcome the recent bill in the National Assembly, called the Information Act, that people can ask questions, but we know that's not the end. There is still more and more that needs to be done in order to be able to solve it in transparency. Information must come out, and it must come out in time. Corruption, people say, also is a culture, but I don't think it is any different in any country, right? In China, in so many other countries where they have developed, I think they have been able to tackle corruption, but it starts with the top. So really, the question comes back to normal. Our constitution wants to eliminate corruption, but it is also telling the citizens to elect somebody who they think is going to remove corruption. I think, that's a very important question.
Do you feel your question is answered? Partially.
Partially. What's left?
You can ask him to follow up.
Which part?
No, I want to ask you,
Please take the mic.
What specifically you, as the president, that you will do to fight that corruption?
Yes.
Good question. First thing, I will declare my assets on my first day in office. 1. 2, I will conduct an audit. There is already an audit, a financial audit on all the institutions. Most of the institutions in this country, it is lying there on the desk of the president. I will look at that report called the Janet Commission. And then if I've declared my asset and I've looked at that report, I think that report need to be. Because the main reason for the implementation of the Janet Commission was not a political reason. It was to remove corruption in this country. To set examples. Now we have parties who have got members that are indicted by that commission, and they ask, how do you expect those parties to come and eliminate corruption when their key members are already indicted by that commission? Think about it.
Okay, we go.
So an independent candidate is the solution now. The power is with the president, not with the party.
Thank you, Mr. Kuram. You advocate for independent candidates. Abla Jawa is around with the mics. Yeah.
Is law still applicable for people that are from party or that came with the presidential aspect?
Let the journalists ask.
Okay, strictly for
this is media. It's our media people.
Oh, okay.
If you are coming with a political party, you will not ask questions because you'll ask your president a question. So let's go with the media guys. Radio, TV, newspaper.
Assalamu alaikum.
Mr. Juve, you have to stand up. Hi.
I wanted to look
Why are you bluffing?
I need my computer.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so if you can. Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Modlamin Diouf of Taranga FM Radio. Mr. Haruna, if you would allow me, I would want all of them to answer the questions that I am going to put forward.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Jase. He has not spoken in a while.
Okay, so 3 questions I have actually. One is they've all been talking about corruption, and they've not made mention of the National Audit Office. This is an office that is established to look at the account of government, to look at everything that is happening. So I have seen something very interesting, and I want to know how they're going to address that in their first 100 days in office. The 2016 report, we've seen that at least 17 payments amounting or totaling to more than $72 million were made without adequate supporting documents. We've seen also 59 million plus another 40 million, petty cash that is spent, some of the embassies spent, and then there were no justification to those spendings. And when you look at the ministers also, unpaid loans amounting to $6.5 million, it's just to get the facts that corruption is something happening, even though they've been talking about it without evidence, pointing out things that we can look at. How are you going to address some of these things highlighted by the National Audit Office? That is one. Can I move to the next question?
Let's have them answer. They cannot keep track. It's long enough.
Excellent.
Mr. Jase, could you respond to that?
All right, thank you very much. You see, many people may wonder why the international community has focused so much of their attention on security sector reforms. You see, it's a simple fact. This is a simple thing. International experts, development experts, have asserted that you must have an effective, efficient, equitable, and accountable policing within the country. That way you can sustain all your socio-economic and political developments. We have excellent laws. We have excellent regulations and all. What we lack in the Gambia is enforcement. We do not enforce any of those. For each and every one of those violations that the gentleman mentioned, there are consequences that should have followed, but there was no enforcement, which means we reinforce the corrupt behavior. Had someone been identified, apprehended, and prosecuted, and if found guilty, sentenced by the court to what was appropriate, it would send a clear signal to others that this behavior is unacceptable. If I know, and if anyone knows for a fact, that they can take money and get away with it, the chances are, in most cases, they'll do so. So it's not a matter of creating anything new, it's a matter of just enforcing the laws that are in place. That would go a long way in addressing all of the corruption. And we can also begin to immediately utilize technology in terms of electronic financial transactions, ensuring that within the first 18 months in office, my government will make sure that cash handling in the Ghana government will be down by 50%. And the next 1 year, 6 months, the next 18 months, it will be 100%. Many countries are fighting corruption by simply going into electronic transactions. This is what we need to do. We need to stop piling cash in the office for someone to take it home. And because electronically, once you put your hand into the cookie jar, you leave footprints are left behind. We can trace the money back to whoever took it. And then prosecution can take place, the appropriate action will be taken, and the individual will be held accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem. We are not enforcing our laws. We have very good laws. Like Mr. Kuran, he was looking at it from an economic standpoint, but I'm looking at it from a law enforcement standpoint. I guess that goes to say that if the only tool you can use is a hammer, you tend to see everything as a nail. He's looking at it from the economic standpoint. I'm looking at it from the law enforcement standpoint. That tells us we need all of these efforts to come together. There isn't no one solution. It's a collective, it's a collection of solutions to solve the problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Mr. Jeng, you wanted everybody to respond to that question, then we'll come to the second. Is that what you said? Or you have a specific question for everyone?
Maybe now I can just go to my second question for the other candidates.
Oh,
I think this.
Who, Jeng?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
On the question of corruption,
Okay,
I think
let us wait for him to ask the question, and then you can make it pregnant.
okay.
Yes.
this year, the government spent $524 million to import fertilizer into the country, okay, and then subsidize it. So farmers were supposed to buy fertilizer at $700. Last year, they brought 11,000 tons. This year, 20,000 tons. Yet, farmers are still crying that they did not receive enough fertilizer. Okay, a good number was exported to other countries. How do you think we can solve this problem? Because this is as perennial as the grass. It happens every year, every farming season. You can ask the farmers. This is a persistent problem. So how can you address that, Mr. Jeng, in your 400 days?
Actually, you see, when it comes to corruption, I think we have to use a broad approach, because at the end of the day, you're talking about human beings. You know, we have our behaviors and we have our attitudes. And the same people that are involved in corrupt practices, they engage in corrupt practices simply because they have there's nothing that regulates them. You know, I think we should focus on prevention, detection, and we have some form of punishment, you know, if somebody is caught with doing corrupt practices. You know, I think looking at the whole system, there's no sector that you go and you will not find corrupt officials who are engaged into corruption, simply because there are no preventive measures, you know. And if you see somebody funnels money because they have access to money, you know, as Mr. Jassy rightly mentioned, you know, we need to sift, you know, from the physical handling of cash, you know, into electronic, you know, way of dealing with money. So we have the banks, we make business of them, you know, and who's going to suffer is the ones that are supposed to benefit from these things, you know, from people who are put in position, you know, to be able to take care of them. But at the end of the day, the farmer is just equal to the guy in the office. At the end of the day, they're all, you know, poor and they're all hustling, they all have families, you know, and they're all surviving. So it's just survival of the fittest. So I think there should be very strict measures that are put in place, you know, to detect, you know, to prevent, you know, and to punish at the end of the day. So that's my stance.
Is that answered? Okay. This question will be your last for the whole evening. You've taken so much time.
No
Yes.
problem. Last question.
Yes. So punch anybody hard.
Mr. Fati. Mr. Fati.
Yes.
We've seen in the Gambia, whenever the president is traveling, the public will be limited to use one way, and the other one will be reserved for the president. I want to know what your view is on this particular thing. Do you think that is a right thing to do, or you think there is a better way to do it? This is a problem that most Gambians are talking about. What's your take?
Thank you, Mr. Juve. That's a very important question. But I think I have to go back a little bit into the corruption issue because, like I usually say, we come mandingol ka ko nyamen dol karamundo dindingol dol problem. When we brought all these things in, this procurement, these kickbacks, and all this stuff, that's are the things, encouraging corruption in many offices. You need to go for your money in an office, they will push you to procurement. You go to procurement, somebody will tell you that you have to give me something for you to accept it. No, I'm coming.
Or you're going somewhere?
No, I'm coming.
Please arrive. Answer his question, then I'll give you 2 more minutes to talk about.
No, I will arrive. Like you said about the using of the one way, I don't think it's good for a system, because you are the president is the servant of the people. So using one way is like you're wasting money, you're wasting resources, you're wasting the time of the people. So in like developing countries, you don't see things like that. But why in the Gambia, a country that needs to move forward, a country that needs development, and people are in the society, they have their daily bread through going in and out of the country. You have six people coming from Pasay to the Combos. So if you use one way for the people, it's like you are disturbing a whole lot of people. So most of our development are not decentralized. You look at our hospitals. We have a problem. Somebody will be sick in Basel, he have to come to the Combos. So coming to the Combos, the president is going out. It's a problem when you use one way. It's just crazy, because I myself have been into that situation. I don't think it's proper for any president to do that kind of thing. It's even inhumane. It's very bad. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Duke, you give our mic back, but for purpose of clarity, Mr. Jase, as a security expert, would you want to comment on that?
Certainly. There are 2 times that the president moves. And each time the president moves, there is a detailed plan. They know his itinerary, the security knows his itinerary. They are familiar with the route that he's taking or she's taking, and they plan accordingly. What fails in the government is there is no good plan. What needs to happen is when the president is moving within the country just on his regular work as president, they can actually time it to where the roads would be closed, nothing more than 4 or 5 minutes before he arrives, and immediately open. But when he or she has a visiting guest, like a state visit from someone else, then their route is closed for a long duration and traffic is diverted. They would know that ahead of time, and such diversion would have been created with the traffic police assisting locals to go about their business with limited interruption. The reason for that is because we have to remember that when we have a visiting head of state in the country, there is a serious risk that that visitor may have an enemy that may come into our country to do harm to them. So we have to put up all of the security measures. We have to ensure that the guest comes in and leaves safely. It is not correct, the manner in which it is done. And when we go into security sector reforms, I have created a new unit within the Gambia Police Force that I would implement called the Gambia Police Force Highway Patrol Unit.
We'll get to security sector reform. We will get to security sector reform.
Okay. Then I would seal that for now. But like he said, it is a concern. Citizens must be put under consideration when the president moves. And it could be done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Juke, that would answer your question, right? Okay. Then let's move to another person.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sam Above of Paradise TV. With your permission, sir, Mr. Drame, I want to ask all these 4 candidates of these 3 questions, please.
You cannot do the Morju style. Ask a specific one, please.
Okay. To Mr. Jen,
yeah.
what are your plans with your government in trying to invest in public transport.
Okay.
If that is answered, I could ask the other two questions.
No, let's finish with him, then you do another question.
Okay.
If you ask too many questions at once, it's discouraging. What will you do about public transport? Assuming public transport is a problem, which I think it is, our drivers now will cut a single journey into 3 or 4. So you pay $10, descend, pay another $5 or $10, descend, another one. Go behold, you're from Banjul and you're going to Brikama. Public transport and these van drivers and taxi drivers have made it impossible. Now going to Bakau, you pay 2 fares or 3. Going to Sukuta, you're going to pay 3 fares to get to Sukuta from Serakunda. Before there used to be 1. So public transport is what he's asking. What will you do about it?
Actually, we just need regulations and enforcement, as Mr. Jase rightly mentioned. Because if a society is left free, to do whatever they want without any scrutiny, I think they will just do whatever they feel like doing. So all we need is just regulations, and enforcement. Thank you.
If I may make it clear,
To Quran or Fati?
to Quran now.
Yeah.
But I just want to adjust to Mr. Jane.
You are not debating here, you're asking questions. If your question is not answered, you can re-ask the question.
Okay.
You're not debating.
Okay. To Mr. Kurang, what is your plan, or what are your plans for your government when you're in office to help in any way abolish this so-called tribalist politics in the Gambia?
Thank you.
Good question, actually.
I think tribalist politics has, just like any other problem, need a diagnosis before the solution. We've seen it emerging, over recent years, and I think it's very obvious to ignore it as a society would be, very dangerous. But I think the main reason is because the politicians have nothing to tell us, have nothing to show for what they have done, have failed in the transition, or have failed to execute the social contract, so they turn to tribal sentiments. They turn to tribal sentiments to appeal to people's emotions instead of rationality. So, as a society, we are a country of Muslims and Christians, and I think we have to fall back on our basic religions. We know that each and every religion that we practice in this country is against discrimination. In Islam, it's obvious. In the Quran, it's highly stated. Izarujatun ardun rajan wabusatul jibalun basan fakanatu habba munbasha wa kuntum azwajan sulasun. On a day when the mountains shall become dust, there will be only 3 tribes. Ashabun Maimanatun, Ashabun Maimanatun. Where the people of the right. Ashabun Mashamatun, where the people of the right. Osabikuna, Osabikun. There will be only 3 tribes. There will be no Mandingo or Wolof or Jola. So if you say you are a Muslim or you are a Christian, and you know that this world is temporary, and you know that there will come a day when they ask you, are you a Mandingo? You will say, Ana Sabikun. You will deny your tribe. So what is the fuse about? So I think as citizens, we need to reject the politics. I am never afraid to address the issue. I was on the tour just recently, and a woman asked me, "Ban heknya?" I said to her, well, I speak Mandingo. My grandmother is Sonanjai, it's a Wolof. My surname is not Kurang. If I go out of Kudang, they call me Kurang. If I'm in Kudang, they call me Sedi Kurang. My surname is a Tukulor surname. But I told her, look, man ragaluma ben het si dekabi. I can tell any het anything because I train 30,000 people. I never discriminate. No student will come forward and tell you I ever ask them what is your tribe. So what is tribe? I'm not ragaluma ben het. As a president, I will execute, and then I am advocating for a national. I've seen how people solve this. So them in Liberia, English and they call it Labran English. So let me say English and Delaga, Singapore English, America English. All right, there is a solution, my friend. It cannot be Mandingo or Fula. It has to be something that is development and that will connect us to the outside world. We have to make our children speak English. That will eliminate it. So there has to be a government, a president coming in must have practical steps, not just preaching the scriptures will solve this problem. This is the practical problem. In Rwanda, in Singapore, Gambia, we are nice. The Jolas are Sanawea with cereals, isn't it? The Fullers are Sanawea with Jolas. But still that, they still kill each other. 20 years ago, we saw in the TRRC. But then, so what is the solution? In Singapore, if you talk about tribe, you have a problem. They have the National Security Act in public. In Rwanda, in public. We need to be more serious, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Now your final question to Mr. Fati now.
And Mr. Jassy.
Or Mr. Jassy.
Both of them. If both of
Jassy
them
first or Fati first?
Fati first and close with Jassy.
My friend, ask one question finally now.
It's one in two.
Choose
or
one.
2 in 1, yeah.
Choose one person and one question.
Okay.
There are other people wanting to ask questions.
I would love Mr. Fati to answer this question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Fati, we will want to know what are your plans for your government, or what are your plans with your government in decentralizing our public offices? Because we could see all offices are in Banjul, which lead to a lot of traffic jams and the like. So, what are your plans?
Thank you so much. That's a very important question. That's a big problem we are facing in the Gambia. If we take office, in our first 100 days, we will try to invite the alcalos and the CFOs and the chairmen, the local government. We invite them for a meeting so that we can decentralize the development plans, because it's very, very important. You look at other countries, like I usually say this, in America, I didn't go to America, but I believe somebody can be born in California and you will grow up in California without going to Texas. Because what is in California is in Texas. You have the same, amenities, the same infrastructure, the same development. So the same thing should happen for the Gambia. What we need in the combos is what we should need in the villages. So it's very, very important to decentralize. Please, we take the Minister of Environment to the URR, Minister of Agriculture to the CRR. I think that those are things that we need to do, because in other countries, people will drive 1 hour, 2 hours to go to work in a place. So Gambia is too small. So we can do that. We can decentralize and try to, involve the whole country into development. Because now, if you look at it, some of the villages are even stagnant. Because more than Santo in other Comboja. So Munatina, because you have to come back to the town. So the most important thing is, let's try to decentralize. Let's try to create universities in the villages. Let's try to open up arms to make sure we have companies and other things in the villages, so that people can stay in Chara, in Badibu, in Kiang. It's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kitaru. Apply, maybe we have one more so we can go into security sector reform. We have done 90 minutes.
Yes.
You want to be the last person?
Yeah, after I give this. So I have 2 more, after that I will.
Okay, single questions directly. Yes, ugly boy, who's going first?
Yes, my name is Fatu Samba.
Oh, is that your name? Okay.
Yes, that's my name.
Okay.
Dama laajte sama question bi si olof. Si yéen ñëpp ñu bari ñu ngi wax ne Aboubacar Dieng, Koura, Fati ak Jasseh da ngeen bugg a just taxaw ku nekk independent candidate suñ demee ba si kanam ngeen mun a léngatoo ak yeneen parties ñu bugg a xam rek ñeneen yu bari ñu ne da ngeen ko def to get fame, ñeneen ñi ñu ne da ngeen ko def not because of anything parce que Gambian si xamul leen ma bugg a rek nga wax Gambian si ndax leen da ngeen def lii ku fame, ndax di ngeen def any coalition ak any party, because ñu bari ñu ngi wax ne few parties rek leen xam si Gambia yéen ñu toog fii kenn xamut leen ñu bari sax amul interest si debate ma bëgg a xam rek lan mooy seen tontu si loolu jërëjëf Fatou Sam, Gambian Talents TV.
Okay, let's start with you, Mr. Jasseh. Are you looking for fame or ministerial position, and you may not actually go to the polls December 4th?
jërëjëf dinaa tontu ci wolof ko defee mu méngoo ak tontu bi mu laaj. Number one, man ci sama gis-gis man doomi Gambia la yàgg naa liggéeyal nguur gi def naa lépp lu ma mun xawal sama réew ci jamono ju ne nekkoon naa fi président ndik suma réew liggéey naa ci police bi liggéey naa immigration jàppale am na ñu bari ñoo xam ne ñii nii su ma romba dinañ ma xam soo ne kenn xamu leen wax na yow xamu lañ waaye man ci sama boppa suma tur egg na fu ma yegg Mr. Dieng a ngi foofu leen Mr. Dieng jamono bi ma nekk Malitu Mr. Dieng moo ma daan jiite mu daan ñëw ajuma bi ne ñu jiite ñu julli juma ñun xamante ne Mr. Kura su ko kenn xamul dañ ñu war a xam na parce que wax yi mu fi wax su ko doomi Gambie xamul dañ ñu ngi xam ñoo xam ne waruñu leen a xam di xam ñoo xam ne nii di ñàkk xam ñoo xam ne ñoo jar a xam politique bi ni moo demee dafa nécessaire pour ñu understand ne nit ki su jógee ba taxaw pour taxawal réewam ci beginning bi alelam da cee def ak ñi ko jàppale ñu ngi jóg di jël seen time di jël seen alal di ko ci def pour nit taxawal réew so decision bi mu war a make is up to them to make a decision but keeping in mind the interest of the nation yow sa gis-gis ak wala gis-gis keneen mooy xëy na bokkaleen parti man bokkoon naa parti waaye ba ma bokkee ci parti ba gis naa ne ni ma bëgg suma ideas yi dégluwuñ ko Gambia yàgg naa taxawal parti benn parti musu la liggéey Gambia mu rek li Mr. Kuran wax mais bi temps bi jot na pour ñu jël ñoo xam ne nii bokkuñu ci parti pour ñu mun a am di independence pour pick ñi nga xam ne ñii ñoo la ñoo mun a taxawal ci ministre position ak yeneen appointment because soo nekkee ci parti dañ leen limite bu nga jël au li ñu nekk ci parti bi pour jox leen place waaye soo amee as independent candidate yow mun ngaa pick képp koo xam ne kii ni fii nga ne au sa comité bi fii nga ne kii mun naa participer man tey su ma nekkoon fi ministre su ma fi nekkoon président mun naa wax ba pare ne ci groupe bi ma nekkal nii I already have my Minister of Economic Affairs mun naa seet ci beneen parti am na ñeneen ñoo xam ne ñu fa they should come out they could be brought on board.
xaw ma ndax yàgg maa dégg monsieur Diassé bu dee yàgg maa dégg yaa ngi xaw a sàcc film bi léegi ndax yow di nga lëkkaloo beneen parti pour dem wala yeneen nit wala sax bu la parti wooyee tey dig la ne boo bokkee si ñun suñ faloo ñu def la ministre waaw wala déet.
su ma bëggoon a nekk ministre dinaa xaar ñu def ma ministre te maa la yëgal ne offre woon nañ ma ministre position jëluma ko parce que xam naa ne su ma ko jëloon liggéey dama na fas yéene def bu ma ko doon mën a def man ñëw ma pour ut liggéey dama ñëw pour def liggéey loolu tax ma ko.
It's very clear. Thank you so much. Mr. Kurang, same question. Will you join any party? You can answer this in Mandinka if you want or in Wolof, saying that she's asked the question. I think you prefer Wolof, right? Okay, Wolof. So go with Wolof, sir.
No, hamga mir mi hamga lalla.
Wolof or Mandinka?
Yes, I have no problem.
I will answer the question as it is asked.
Okay.
Right? Dina answer to Wolof. Mbir mi hamga lalla. Nekut na nit ñi xam nañ la na xamuñ la loolu amut solo. Luñ xam ci yow moo gën a important. Am na parti yoo xam ne yaa ngi wax ne ñoom ñooy parti yu mag yi xam nañ leen si ñoom ba pare. UDP ak NPP Fafisa ak Fakawakula. Benn parti bi moo xaaj mu nekk benn. Ok. Dundu ak dandang la. Waaw. Dundu ak dandang parti am na fi ñu xaaj ko. Lan moo ci ute yëpp benn moo tax ma ne luñ xam ci yow moo gën a am soxla ndax nit ñi xam nañ la du noonu am na parti yoo xam ne taxaw nañ fi ñu ngi wax ne parti bu mag lañ man gisuma ko maa ngi dox dëkk bi for almost 1 year 12 months maa ngi waxtaan ak nit ñi wat Gambians yi lu ñoo wax jarut ma déglu keneen mu wax ma ko maa ngi just jógee démb ba Basse laa nekkoon time bi maa ngi woon Bakadaji this time I know what xam naa lu nit ñi rek di wax ne luñ gis doyut leen soo luñ xam si ñoom moo gën a am soxla ndax nit ñi xam ne ñu fii yëpp ay populaire men lañ kitaabu dañ la moom a gën a populaire fii Gambie Sénégal Guinée Bissau xam nañ ko soo xam naa ne du utaat beneen popularité right Mr. Diassé and so on man nekk naa fii ci télévision balaa 20 years ago right even 1991 so musuma uti ministère ci Yaya Jammeh musuma uti ministère ci Barrow suma students yi nekk nañ fi ministre musuma dem ci benn président nga ne ko jox ma place bu ma bàyyee jaane commission offer nañ ma pour ma jël place ma ne non man teacher laa loolu doy na ma waaye fu mu nekk nii nekkuma di uti parti ma ne wax naa ko ci bu ma commencé di wax ma ne parti yi su fekkoon ne ñoom doxaloon nañ loo xam ne right jaar na ak yoon bi ni kon ñun duñ jóg ñu taxaw waaye seen interest moom lañ jiitoo ci interest yi dëkk bi moo tax ñun ñu jóg soo nekkul uti place moo tax ñu jóg te nit ñi xam nañ loolu Gambia fii fu mu nekk nii decide am luñu Barrow moo ko wax di nga mun a moom sa parti waaye moomuloo kenn.
kon naa boobu seet na wax boobu seet na kitaabu benn tontu bi si soose wala si wolof.
mun naa jaxase boor yëpp ñaari yëpp. waaw parce man. waaw exactly loolu lu am solo la torop Fa Samba comme suma naataangoo yi ni ñu ko waxee rek ñun nekkut rek ne dañ jóg rek ngir nekk ak giit loolu du waxi because tey Gambia dafa soxla jëm kanam te jëm kanam boobu noonu fooguñ ne parti yii nii ñu fi nekk ñooñu ko mën a jox because tey politique bi yëpp dafa jaxasoo nit ñi xeet lañ dee wax nit ñi luñ dee wax comme pour nga gis Gambia sax def dee jafe soo loolu moo tax ñu leen di jóg te man su fekkee yi fi daraja la comme Mr. Kuran nu ko waxee man recently I went to Guinea-Bissau comme jali baagaa ko ñaamen tiltan tuuraataan te tiltan nin saba tuuraataan nin saba loolu lañ ma ree nag so su fekkee popularity I think I'm more popular than even the big parties leaders is I'm popular than them because I'm known sub-region bi yëpp xam nañ ma so I believe the most important thing is nga bugga sa réew nga xam knowledge bi because education is totally different from knowledge. That's what we are facing right now. You have educated people who are not knowledgeable to advance this nation. So what we need is we need to come together and show the big parties that this is Gambia and the Gambia we really need is in us the people, not the parties. Thank you so much.
Mr. Jeng, from Nancy Sosa, wala si Olof, ñu tontu.
Naa dugg ci Olof waaye du ma jël wax ne man bokk na ci suma philosophe façon laajte yu mel nii du ma leen nangu mu jël waxtu ci man. To me, I see it as a reactive question, and we are in a proactive platform. Wow! So mandal dina tënk suma tontu di ci kanam rawul bët and ki laajte question bi moom foofu la tollu waayam la te xëj na bu gëreew moo tax mu laajte ko dinaa teg suma loxo fii ñu continuer pour dem ci àllikalaaj fii jërëjëf.
balaa ñoo àllikalaaj Ablaye that was the last question ñu soog a àllikalaaj ndax ok yeneen ñaar dañu war a laal si réforme si de te réforme si foog naa yaakamti nañ ko itam waaye nag buñ joxee waxtu foog naa li def dee baax yéen itam ngeen am lii ngeen waxtaan ak askan bi foog naa am na solo kon ngeen ñu taxirul ñun yëpp rek ñu yaatal mbir mi rek defe naa Colin.
Okay, I'm Mahmoud, and I have a question for everybody actually.
Oh.
And I'll start with Kitab. You've made mention that you're going to eradicate or stop youth from going to backward. And you've also mentioned that you're going to have discussions with these youths to know what their problems are. And after knowing their problems, or right now, we all know what the problem the youths are. I think you shouldn't tell us that you're going to have discussions, but we want to know how are you going to solve the issue of the youth in order to stop them from going to this dangerous journey of backward? Because, I mean, we already know why youths are going, but how are you going to stop that before you say that you're going to stop them from going?
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay. I think I can go in Mandinka, right? Yes. Gambia, na nina bango dibe 60% is youths. You can understand. Funding ke dum fana bi nyim bango kanjang inyina ka wala folola. Ning campaign be ke kan nka wuri wala la funding ke la na sira wala no ko be ke ka understand le. Mo be bela kilo be mo ko be ke la bana bo wala ikanyina ndola. But there are lots of plans that you can set up for the youths. And those plans, I'm coming, and those plans, look at our sea. We have to take ownership of our sea. We have youths that are born in these coastal areas. They know the river and they know how to fish. If PDP is elected into office, we'll make sure we take ownership of our sea and give it to the youths. We are not only going to push them into the sea, we're going to invest in them. We need to buy big canoes and fishing trawlers and give it to them to fish and sell the products in the Gambia. That will be income for the youths and the country. You see, even our taxi drivers, we have lots of Gambians doing taxi in this country. But it's very, very simple. Go and order cars and bring them here. Give it to the youths. So they are taxi, so they are 300 government, 200 government. It's important. Push them into sports. Help them. Look at Bina Bass and Ibrahim Kamara. They did well with sports. Sport is what unites the country. But are we investing in sports? So Speedy has a PDP government. We'll make sure we invest too much in sports. It's very, very important. Not even only sports, even agriculture. Youth can do, because my mom is an old woman. But in 2016, I went to Jara, and he was using only the hands. So I believe if we start, buying machines, using technology, the youth will go into agriculture. And if they go into agriculture, in the next few years, will be food self-sufficient. So I believe all these mechanisms will help the youth to stay in the country and work harder for the country and earn something for themselves and earn something for the country. Yes.
Is that answer good enough for you?
Yes.
We'll go to the next candidate.
Kuran, yours is going to be a pregnant question, actually.
I hope we can.
You've worked with the Janneh Commission, and of recent, you've mentioned about some couple of hundreds of tractors of former President Jammeh being, parked at one place, and of course, we've seen farmers being given donkeys. If you were in power and those tractors were still lying down there, how would you distribute them to the farmers in order to revive back our agricultural system? And of course, you've talked about Social Security not doing, of course, what they're supposed to, providing housing for people, but just giving, 20 by 20, only a few Gambians can afford, and the cost of rent is, of course, high. If you become president, how do you solve this problem to make sure the Social Security do what they're supposed to do in order to make housing easier for Gambians?
Good. Thank you very much. I think it's a good question. In an executive presidency, most systems are as good as the president. So if Mr. Jassy, for example, said, we have good laws in the Gambia. We inherited them from the British. One of the most efficient civil service you can find in the world is the British civil service. And they handed over to us a police system, a civil service system, perfectly. But are they working? They're not working. So your police service, for example, will not work if your president is not working, right? The Janneh Commission had a similar problem. The presidency, the executive power, was not interested in the commission. So the commission was just going on like a football match without the referee. You understand what I'm saying? So when the executive, it was the executive that was the stakeholder that gave the contract to the commissioners, who are not civil servants, but are there to execute a specific task. So you should be on their neck all the time to make sure that they deliver. The justice minister was the go-between between the commission and the civils and the executive. So in the case of the tractors that were at stake, that's a typical example of what is happening in the Gambia. Since 2016, this whole government has been handed over to lawyers to run all the commissions, to receive money. They are not trained managers. I don't know whether Gambians know that. They are not trained managers. Most lawyers in this country tell you they are businessmen. They only employ one secretary. That is what was the problem of the Janneh Commission. We set up a system. We are trained managers. I was brought to the Janneh Commission simply because I'm a systems accountant. We set up a system to deliver and discharge these tractors under a transparent system. Because of political interest, that time, Barrow, UDP so because of that, anything that works for UDP works for Barrow at that time. So I was fired. Some people even say I was APRC, even though I never shake hands with the chef and then I never met him. But then the thing was, political interest took over. The lawyers who took over the system when we left did not understand what was the procedure, the business processes you have to put in place to discharge the tractors. So they kept talking and talking and talking and talking. And the tractors, the rain was coming. July, August, September, rain. Tractor le bango male foga pare. Lal na suuf be pare. Ñu ngi taxaw ci police station yi. Taw mu ngey ñew. Tractor bi dafa yaaw du amaat njëriñ. Lolu motax mu ne mané 3 months bu gaay jël to dispose. They didn't know what procedure and processes they have to do it. It was a business process. If you decide to dispose, you may argue or not whether disposal was a good idea by the commission. That's beside. But once a decision is made, a business process takes over. We were there as entrepreneurs and systems accountants. We set up a process with the police, the investigators, everybody. We put it together. They dismantled it. They came, they couldn't run it. It took them 3 months. The country lost almost $500 million. So that's what I said. I don't know what was the ending of your last point was what?
Because it was pregnant question.
The social security and housing.
Because the cost of rent is just beyond.
Back to my statement. In an executive presidency, every institution is as good as the president. You saw in the Janet Commission, more than $5 billion was taken away from the social security during the Jammeh government to do so many fancy projects. Duman makowa. So they make internet you move up. The testimony is there. The money was squandered. It was not the problem of the accountant in the social security. The orders were coming directly from the president's office to the board and to the managing director, right? Because there was an executive presidency. So the social security, you cannot blame them. The same thing now. The question is more for the president. Where is the housing? The pensioners' money is there. Social security, for your information, is richer than many banks in this country. Because pensioners have more money than banks. Banks have no money. They fight for the pensioners' money like life and death. So the social security has money, the pensioners' money. My argument is that why is it only Bakote that this country can boast about for 55 years? Why not Katong? Why not Gunju? Why not Basse? Why not Farafeni? Where are the houses? The civil servants are still working for 50 years and they are still renting. The policemen. The money is there. The money is there. Alice be moved up. But the systems and the powers that be need to have the interest of the people and the know-how to execute it.
Yes.
Mr. Jen now or to Mr. Jase?
Yes. I'll shift to Mr. Jase, of course. Mr. Jase, we all know this country has a loan that our grandkids would probably pick it up after we're gone. How do you, as president, manage the economy of the country so that we can do away from, of course, adding more loans to the ones we already have, or the ones, I mean, of course, coming?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. First of all, we have to recognize the fact that Gambia is a poor country, and as such, we cannot afford to be wasteful in the limited resources that we have. So that takes us back to the issue of fiscal discipline and management. We have to fight corruption because we're wasting a lot. We're wasting a lot of our resources. Once that is done, to put the many goals that is wasting our resources, we now have to turn to the reality. And in every nation, the engine of growth, of economic growth, is the private sector. We need to start empowering our local content. We need to start supporting our local content. You see, when it comes to direct international investment, who enjoys some of these tax rates, what they do is they come into a bandit of tax rates and they leave. We have to now put our focus on what is ours. And I would go as far as to say, in order to kind of like energize the youth, especially in entrepreneurship, I will consider bringing back the NTC concept. The NTC concept would give opportunity to the youth to become entrepreneurs. They will be helped by government to engage, and they will be given tax incentives that are necessary to keep them alive. They'll be giving low interest rate loans so that they can survive, and also it will help bring down the cost of food in the country. We must create an environment in which the Gambian, the locals, engage in business activity, profitable business activity, without having to pay all of their earnings to taxes. There must be tax breaks for these local small businesses. There has got to be a codified tax system so that it will have a threshold. If you do not reach the threshold, you will not pay a certain amount of tax. We must help the local content. We keep losing a lot of our resources because of number one, corruption, and people who come in, get what they can, and then leave, and we are left holding the empty bags. When it comes to creating a better economic environment for the Gambia, I can say again, it's corruption. We must fight it. We must support entrepreneurship. We must look for other ways in which to generate more revenue, and stop creating these allowances that we give to top government officials, because the people who receive the largest amount of the largest amounts of allowances are the very people who have the highest salaries. They're the ones who get to travel abroad and get per diem. The people that are at the bottom, who earn about $5,000 a month, never have a chance to travel. They don't receive per diems. They are constantly poor. So we need a complete overhaul of the system. Like everyone is talking about systems change, we need to look at things from scratch, and we need technocrats to do this. The best that Gambia has to offer, it cannot be foreign-led, it has to be a Gambian-led solution by Gambians for Gambians, and then this is something once well documented, we can present to our developmental partners so that we would begin to get on track. The fact of the matter is Gambia is off track in just about every sector, and we need to get back on track. This is why I said I would go as far as to say that once we establish I would consider passing a law that would bar non-Gambians from engaging in retail trade. Foreigners can engage in wholesale trade and manufacturing, but retail trade, I am going to keep that sector for the Gambians, for the local Gambians, so that they will not have to compete with, for instance, an Indian who's running a mini market. It is unfair to have an Indian come all the way from India with their resources to run a mini market that the Gambian was supposed to run in the first place. So I think what we need to do is to start looking at what's ours, protecting it, developing it, and keeping it for ourselves, whilst we also try to take advantage of the Gambians in the diaspora who are living in economies that are advanced and who can actually contribute towards the economic development of the country. Give them opportunities for investment. This can happen. For every foreign investor in the Gambia, I can assure you there is a Gambian who has equal access to equal capital and is willing to invest in the Gambia. The fact of the matter is, Gambians, when they come to Gambia to invest, they have no desire to pay for bribes that foreign investors may be willing to do. If you look at the State Department report, it says that there is a tendency of foreign investors to come into the Gambia, bribe foreign government officials so that they get the contracts that they look for. So this has to change. We have to look from within to start solving our problem instead of looking outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to put a stop to this now. We go into security reforms and then we come back. We have spent almost 2 hours now already. So maybe we'll borrow another 45 to an hour to conclude. And in that sense, like I said in the beginning, let's just open it up. I mean, you guys, this may be a great opportunity that we have several media houses together, and we discuss. People want to have answers, and we should provide them as much answers as they would be able to take from this debate today. Now, switching gears, going to the reforms. It has been a campaign rally in this country that reforms would be cardinal. We talked about 22 years of dictatorship. We talked about changing the winds, changing the operational modus operandi of this country, that we would now shift gears. I think that's why we established so many commissions, from the Jana Commission to the TRRC to the Constitutional Review Commission. I mean, the security reform, law and order. We're talking about so many reforms in this country. Where we are 4 years going to 5 in. This is what we're going to interrogate now. Each of you will have the same 5 minutes to talk about your strategy for reform. What sort of reforms are you looking for in your first 100 days in office, as far as these sort of reforms, law and order enforceable commissions, fighting other ailments in the community, establishing and of course creating confidence in the security services of the country. One of the things that a lot of politicians are now questioning is, why do we still have ECOMIC in the country? Do we not support or even agree that we have security men and women in this country who can look after the country, and we don't have to look for outside the country? So we'll begin with you this time, Mr. Fati. What sort of reforms in this aspect are you looking for? All sorts of reform except economic, now that we have talked about the economy.
Thank you so much. Security reforms is key to every country, because a secured nation is a safe nation for everyone. But looking at things in the Gambia, it's like our security is dormant. And it shouldn't be like that, because we have very able and good security personnel in the Gambia. So having other securities from other countries to be serving our president, to be in our barracks in the top places, it's something that we need to run away from. If PDP is elected into office, I don't think the ECOMIC will have 2 weeks in the Gambia, because we have the capability. Yes, we have the capability, and we need to give the confidence to our securities, because they have done it in places. They have done it in Liberia, in Darfur, in other places. So we just have to give them back the confidence and let them serve the country, because that's what the country needs. If you look at the burglaries in this country, it's too much, and we have the security. You look at the thieves and everything in this country, and we have the security. But why are they not, coming out? Because they are not considered. And it's very, very important for a president to know what is in your barracks and what is with your security. Because I personally, I usually go to the Union barracks. That's where I usually take my wife for antenatal and other things. But I believe they really, really, really need to be considered. Gambia is a youthful nation, and most of our youths are in the security service. We need reforms, but I believe it's all come back to the system. We need to change the system. We need to sit down and assess and see what is the problem. If we do that, and I believe we can achieve big in our reforms. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Mr. Kuran, 5 minutes. What sort of reforms apart from economic? Now we're not talking about numbers. We're not keying in numbers now.
Well, we may still end up with numbers, knowing how many securities we need. But I think security sector reform is very critical. I always like to make reference to the Prime Minister of Singapore, the man who changed a country from a poor country into a developed country in 3 decades, in 1 generation. And he has this to say, right? How would you be secure if you only send the children of the poor people to the army? How would you be secure? You cannot be secured like that. Every citizen, every family in the country must have a stake in the security. That is why the Youth for Change, on a Change Party manifesto, suggested national service, just like in Singapore, in Brunei, in Rwanda. And national service does not necessarily mean giving guns to our young people. No, on the contrary, it means that putting security as a matter of concern for every family. Now look at it like this. Why do we say that you cannot only have poor people in the army? It's not safe. Think of an army man. You give me a gun, you give a man a gun, and he has no food to eat. He has no proper house to sleep. You ask him to go and defend the country at night, and there is a riot taking place. I'm taking this example from Lee Kuan Yew. You have a riot taking place. You ask this man to go and put down the riot, to stake his life, to stop the riot. The first thing that comes to mind is, what will I defend? Who am I defending? Am I just defending the president? Should I just go and stake my life to defend a president who spends millions of dollars on dawal? No. I go out as a citizen, as a security officer, to defend myself, my family, and the rest of the country. But how do I defend myself if I have no property? I have no house to defend. I'm a security officer. I have no good house. I don't even have a place to sleep. What am I defending? There must be a stake for our security in the service. So when we talk about security sector reform, we must think about it in this sense. We spent about $2 billion on a transition that gave us nothing. That money could have gone to implement a security sector reform. You cannot just implement the security sector reform by saying, Babukar Sise retired, Lamin Fati promoted. No, it has to be a comprehensive policy of taking our young people, putting the future of our country in their hands, giving them the proper orientation, making sure that they have a stake in the country by investing in them in terms of education, in terms of giving them a stake to the national cake. The politicians have been chopping the money since 2016. The military, they put them in buses, they go to Yundum Camp and then Pajara Barracks. 4 o'clock, they put them back into buses again, they go to their families. No part-time job. How much is the salary? Did you ask? I'm a banker. I was working in the bank. Some of them are getting less than 3,000. How many people here? How many people here can survive on 3,000 without raba? A man with a gun is not supposed to do raba. He is supposed to survive on his salary. He is supposed to have a house. So security sector reform must start by making sure that the people in the security system have got a stake in the national cake. So reform starts with that. There are other types of reforms. We have a health sector reform. We have an agricultural sector reform. But obviously, all these reforms, we have discussed them along the way. I think the key issue, like you said, that is a security sector reform. Some of the generals need to go, but then they must go back to a house. They cannot go to an empty place. They cannot go back to where they don't have rent. Obviously, go security sector reform. Security sector reform. Among the kai today, ikaw dole Messi, dole wuli, the army reform. Obuka ke kodo koma. Nim politician o de kodo bedo mo ya baby more like transitional reform, investigation upon investigation. What about the police? You cannot have a security sector reform without money. So we are suggesting that a national service be introduced to every family. To President founding in Singapore, the Prime Minister's son goes to the army, and then they are earning good money. In Singapore, an army officer can become the director of the civil aviation. In Singapore, the army officer can become the head of GAMTEL because the army is a university. We need to build an army and a police service and a security sector where the security, thousands and thousands of young men, you put them in camp. Look at 1994. Why do you think there was a coup d'etat in 1994? Most Gambians don't like to come to the point. Let me tell you one small story. My friend,
I think you should quickly come to the point.
I got 2 minutes, right? My friend served in Liberia. They came from Liberia in 1991. They were demonstrating on Denton Bridge. You know what they did to them? They suspended them. They dismissed them. They jailed them. 89 members of the infantry battalion retired before the 1994 coup d'etat. There was a vacuum. There was a huge vacuum. The Gambians didn't pay the security officers. These boys were sent to jail. They were retired. They left the army. The vacuum came. You know who took over? The people who never went to war. Think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Kura. Mr. Dieng, 5 minutes, the sort of reform you want to see that is different from economic reform in your first 100 days.
Actually, I think in certain cases, we have to be very logical, not emotional. When you look at security, it has different components, and all these components, they have a role to play in society. And there's a governing body, that is the ministry. So if you want to bring about a reform, I think you have to put each and every sector in perspective, to be able to bring that synergy, bringing the army, the police, the immigration department, and every security sector, on a round table, for them to look at the security issues of this country, with a broader perspective. I think from there, involving the experts, because you have to involve the right people. It is a process, and the process needs steps. And these steps, need some consistency to be able to get to where we want to get to. And when you look at Gambia, I think the security issues here is not that complex. It just needs, the involvement of the right people, who have the right knowledge, because knowledge is the antidote here. Looking at people like Mr. Jassy, whose expertise is security, and probably all the people, who have their different expertise in different areas when it comes to our security issues. I think the way you look at things, I think it's a problem. My approach, towards reformation, is engagement. Once you engage, you will know exactly what the issues are. Otherwise, you'll just duplicate your efforts, towards trying to solve a problem. It's going to be costly, it's going to take time, and at the end of the day, the country is at a level that, we need to be very proactive, in the way we approach things. So my 100 days of office, like I told you, I have a very, very serious technical audit, to see what's wrong and where, so that I'll be able to know who, identify and associate, and bring the right elements, that will give us, a proper security reform, a blueprint that will take us, to a level, whereby, if not all, we'll be able to tackle, the most pressing security issues. That's my point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jen. Mr. Jase, first 100 days, what sort of reforms would you do, sir, besides economic?
All right. For all of the sectors, one has to understand what's in it and what needs to be done to change. So, and you're going to have to use technocrats to do this. For each sector, I am going to get the right people with the right background to go in there and look at and make an assessment of the sector, and then make recommendations for change within the first 100 days. This is necessary because, for instance, if you took a guy like myself and asked me to do an assessment of the economic situation of the country, and asked Mr. Kuran to do the security assessment of the country,
I hope internet is not channeled. Okay.
I will set up teams that would look at each sector and come up with an assessment and the way forward. And that, like I said, would be part of our strategic direction. When it comes to the area of security sector, all the work has been done. I was involved in it. I read all of the documents. I participated in writing some of them. And all we need right now is implementation. Security sector has stalled because of one reason. There is a general inability within the security services to link conceptual advice to the practicalities of implementation. That is, they will read what's on the paper, but they are unable to actually put it on the ground. And this is where we need to get started. So within my first 100 days, I know exactly where the documents are, I know exactly who was involved, I know exactly what to do. I will start security sector reforms immediately because all of the work has been done. Gambian, when it comes to the internal security, I will be looking at the police, number one. The police, what we need to understand is that the present policing system we have in Gambia is not based on the British system. At no point in the history of the Gambia have we had a British style of policing. What we had, or continue to have to some extent, is a colonial policing system. A system that is a policing system that is designed to protect the crown or to protect the state house. There is no, this is what is known as regime security. What we have done in SSR is to create another part of security reform that addresses human security. That is the security of people like you and I, in our homes, in our streets, feeling secure like the president would in his state house. And to do that, we came up with a double layer. And it's a two-pronged system. One is called the Gambia Police Command, National Police Command, and the Gambia Police Force Regional Command. The National Command deals and operates just like the Gendarmerie, if you remember the Gendarmerie, years back. They are a national police that have national jurisdiction, and they work at a certain level and have specific jurisdictions. And within these jurisdictions, they are the number one force that would respond. And then you have the regional sector. The regional police system has already been introduced because right now we have police commissioners in every region. What needs to happen is to make sure that police commissioner reports only to a deputy inspector of police and nobody else. This is to bring about a total decentralization of the police services. So when you have the regional police system, you will have the Bandit Police Command, KMC Police Command, North Park Police Command, West Coast Police Command, NBR, URR, and so on and so forth. Each would have its own commissioner of police, and they will operate completely independent of each other, and their jurisdiction is only within their region. The national police would work like the general to support all of the regional police departments and to have specific jurisdiction. It is important at this point that we create two new deputy inspector general of police, one for the regional command and one for the national command. To separate them, that way the reporting pattern would be easy to understand and put in such a way that every single officer will report to only one superior at any given time. Not two, not three, just one. You get your set of instructions and you report to just one supervisor. This is the system we create. And another thing that is already done is that the idea of removing the security services from the civil service and call them the civil and come up with an act called the Security Services Act and also have the Civil Service Act. This is important because then you can begin to separate the two. For instance, if you, because of the nature of their job, you want to increase the salaries of the security service, you don't have to increase the salaries of every civil service. Every civil servant.
Sir, you want to do the last 2 minutes? Do you want to do the last 2 minutes?
2 minutes?
No, we owe you 2 minutes. You want to take that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. And this is what we will do basically in the internal security. And when it comes to the military, I would say that we maintain the military and have 3 battalions. 3 battalions of 1,000 each. Now, what we do with these 3,000 men and women is not leave them in the country to run around aimlessly, but to actually create an Army Corps of Engineers within them and an Army Corps of health technicians. The Army Corps of Engineers would be responsible for building roads that are not the private roads. These are the field roads, schools, health centers, as well as other public services that the communities need. One of the units within the Army Corps of Engineers would be water treatment specialists. A team that will be responsible for ensuring that every single community in our country has access to clean running water. Only the Army is the asset, the national asset that we can use to do this. So it's about time we train them, equip them, and send them out to do this. Because as I have traveled the country, what I realize is that water is a tremendous shortage. In the abundance of water, we are thirsty. That is unacceptable. And we have the military that could be reorganized, reoriented to do that. When it comes to the healthcare sector, the military could be trained to become the primary healthcare givers in the country. They will operate by using mobile healthcare units that will go into the villages to actually, on a regular basis, to bring healthcare services to people who otherwise don't have it. This we have done in many countries. It's being done. We need to start utilizing our military asset to serve our people. The Navy, I will not call it a Navy, I will transform it into a Coast Guard with specific jurisdiction. they will have a specific responsibility, which would be to, they will be responsible for port and coast security, drug interdiction at sea, aids to navigation, search and rescue, and marine safety, and a host of other things. The time is short, but I could have gone on for the week. But I will stop right here and hope I have an opportunity to finish up later.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we're going to do the questions and answers pretty quickly. It's already past 8 o'clock, and we intend to be out of here before 9, inshallah. Now, Mr. Quran, let's start with you. OIC has stalled for a long time. In your first 100 days, what will you do about OIC? We are promised roads, we are promised hotels, we are promised economic prosperity. We were told actually that the OIC funds were already here more than a year ago, but the roads are still to be done. If we call you Your Excellency, Alhaji Mamadi Quran of #1 Marina Parade, what will you do about OIC?
Thank you. I think the OIC is a typical problem of the borough government. You know, a lot of hype, a lot of promise. We had about billions coming. We haven't seen anything. We had about job creation, no jobs created yet. We had about expensive highways costing $1 million every kilometer. We are yet to see. So far, we still have potholes. I think what I would do, you know, in the first 100 days for the OIC, obviously, if you want to change something, you have to analyze it. To analyze, you have to investigate. We need to know what actually happened. Because we know there was a head of OIC that has been taken away. We know that people are being paid very high salaries, but for the Gambian, still now, nothing has happened. The OIC is not just about a conference. These international conferences are opportunities for economic growth. Because together with the investment that comes in building roads and so on, job creation comes in, and then development also comes in. So what I would do, I would still believe that we can hold a conference. I think that a country that takes in maybe 100, 200,000 tourists should have no problem taking in, 50 or so heads of states and bringing them in. I think the government promotes, and people within the government put a lot of hype on this project so that money chopping can happen, right? As an accountant, I would do an investigation. I will not call a commission, because commissions, we know, chop money is what commissions do, and then nothing comes out of them. I think you can hold a simple financial investigation, not within 100 days, but within 2 weeks. You'll be able to tell people what happened to the money. Every accountant knows that. And then from there on, we will take it right from there. We would like to go with the project still.
Mr. Deng, in your first 100 days, what will you do regarding the draft constitution that failed? The constitution that so much money was spent on, so much consultation was done with Gambians at home, in the diaspora, institutions, heads of departments, villagers, alcalos, everybody has participated in that process. Yet, the new constitution never came into force. What will you do if you become president regarding that?
I would pick up the issues that brought about the setback. Because I think, if I can totally recall, it was some few clauses in the constitution that certain people reacted to, regarding the Muslim world and the Christian world, which constitutes, a majority of the population. I think the Muslims were against secularism, and the Christians were afraid of Sharia. Which I think if the commission engaged the scholars in both religions, I think they would have come to terms. So, what I will do is I will engage, the population back, because the country needs a book, to rely on, and the country without a constitution, I think it's dangerous. So my first 100 days, I will use a restorative approach, whereby I will involve the people who are reacting to this clause in the constitution, so that we can have a common ground, that we all know that it's a book, that answers each and every one of us our needs, because it's something that we all contributed towards being put together, and there's a lot of money that has been invested in it. So I think it's something that if we are matured enough, you'll be able to have a proper book.
Do I hear you say you will implement it as it is if you are president?
Actually,
its implementation.
I will engage, the issues that are, hindering it from being implemented, and
I don't think the issue of secularism is in fact the issue.
Actually,
it was a talking point.
It's one of the issues, because I personally, met a group of people, who formed a group, ready, to go against, the Constitution
in Parliament,
because they think, that the Constitution, will come to, promote homosexuality, and because at the end of the day, it's a conflict in it. So, yeah.
I think the reason the draft constitution failed is the term limit, for example.
That's one of the
I think there's the main issues why it failed.
Actually, they are quite
the retroactivity also of term, the term limits. So there are key things that I feel if they were adopted, it would have passed.
Actually, regarding the term limits, this has something to do with the politicians. But religion also have a major role to play, because at the end of the day, when the constitution gets into parliament before it's passed on, it has to be blessed by the Gambian people, because it's something for the Gambians, not just for the parliamentarians. So it's chaotic. I think everybody have to accept if the constitution has to be adopted, it has to be on everyone's will who is a Gambian. We all willingly have to go to the constitution, knowing that it's going to be favorable to everyone. So we need to sit back on the drawing board to re-engage and involve the right people, so that we can get to terms, both politicians and the religious aspect. So,
Mr. Fati, we come to you now. As it stands today, NPP and APRC have formed an alliance. Some people have been upset about it. Some people are excited about it. Some people, in fact, feel it's the right thing to do. We need to reconcile ourselves and become one Gambia, one people, one nation, and to the Gambia ever through. But what do you think about this as a presidential aspirant? Would you have done this or not, and why?
Mr. Drame, that's a good question. I've seen it on social media. It's all over. People are complaining about it. But to my own perspective, I believe the right reparation should have happened. At least reconciliation is something that it needs to be out there. But the problem we had is even with the TRRC. The rightful sensitization, civic education was not done to bring people closer to each other. They were going on with the TRRC and everything, but the right civic education was not done. And NPP and APRC coming together, if you look at it, people would be a little bit offended because, families have suffered and lots of things have happened in this country. But if you look at it deeply too, it was not the APRC as a party, it was the government, the then government who did all those atrocities. But what I believe is one thing we should do as a country is let's come together as one people. Let's forget about what happened before. It's going to be very, very hard, but that's the rightful thing to do. If we want to develop as a nation, we need to come together. Rwanda have done it, other countries have done it, and I believe we the Gambians can do it too. If we keep on having these grudges among ourselves, hatred among ourselves, it's just going to increase many times. It's not going to help the country. So if we want to work as one people, we need to come together, forget about all those things that have happened. But at least the right reconciliation should have happened, at least by the help of artists and other people.
So you agree NPP and APRC should be together for one Gambia for unity, right? Yes, no?
No, the whole country should come together. Not only APRC and NPP coming together.
So you see nothing wrong with them coming together?
Yeah, it's in terms of politics, people might think that it's bad and things like that, but
no, what do you think?
What I think is it's necessary for all the country, for all the parties to come together. Is very, very important. It's going to be very, very hard. But for people to come, it's not only about party, it's about our people. we have things in heart that is disturbing us. We need to come together and throw that away and look at the interests of the country and develop the nation. That is the most important thing.
Thank you, Mr. Fati. Mr. Jase, we're coming to you, and as a security expert, I'm going to be blunt and straightforward with this. Our men in uniform are unhappy. The commander-in-chief of the Gambia Armed Forces have never stepped a foot in a military installation in this country in more than 4 years. They are not happy. If you become commander-in-chief, how do you make the men in uniform happy?
First of all, I would like to address the feeling of the current president to visit military and security installations in the country. It clearly shows that he is clueless about his role as president of the Republic of the Gambia. As the Constitution says, his role is to protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Gambia. And if he doesn't take the time to go and see the men and women who engage in his task, then he clearly doesn't have any interest in his job. Number two, once you reform the security services, you will realize that Gambia has what is needed in order to protect and secure ourselves. We are part of a connection of security within the sub-region. And it is important that we have strong security in the Gambia because a chain will break at its weakest point. Gambia should not be allowed to have weak security. It is not to Senegal's interest, it is not to sub-region's interest. And if Mr. Barrow is behaving in a manner that is making our security services unhappy, we become less secure, the sub-region becomes less secure. This is what we must understand. And I have worked with these men and women, I have interacted with them at different levels, and I know the capability is there. For instance, when I was given the job to formulate internal policies for the Immigration Department and Gambia Police Force, I came to the realization that when I came in 1999 to join the Gambia Police Force, I was the only one with a bachelor's degree in the entire force. When I met this group of men and women from the Gambia Police Force and the Gambia Immigration Department, each and every one of them has a bachelor's degree. This was tremendous development. And when I interacted with them, when I worked with them, I realized the tremendous potential that they have, that the nation must take advantage of. Give them the right tools to work with, give them the right environment to work with, and they will have the job done. At this point in time, we should not have had any member of ECOMIG being in the Gambia. You see, one thing that gave me insider's information is that in 2016, when Mr. Jammeh refused to leave, ECOWAS was tasked, as we all know, with the responsibility of negotiating with him or coming up with a strategy to make him leave. That task was placed at the hands of President Mahama of Ghana. Mahama of Ghana turned to a security firm here in the United States for direction. That firm called me and put me part of the team to create the strategy of which to remove President Jammeh. During those discussions, I came to the realization that all of those people that were there were very, very concerned that if we allow ECOMIG to come in with too many of Senegalese soldiers, Gambia would see it as some kind of an occupation, and it would also, whether we accept it or not, create a backdoor entry for Senegal into our sovereignty. As it stands today, this ECOMIG is looking more and more like a Senegalese invasion, marginalizing, sorry, not a Senegalese invasion, but a Senegalese occupation. When President Barrow came to Gambia on a Senegalese military plane, they would not have understood what that meant. That meant Senegal was going to install our president. I would have preferred Mr. Barrow to come back to Gambia on a Gambian bicycle than fly in a Senegalese military airplane. We are a sovereign nation. We are anti-Senegalese, but we are a sovereign nation with the duty to protect our turf. The God-given territory that we have that is called Gambia. Protecting Gambia and loving Gambia is not hating anybody, but we have to have mutual respect for each other's sovereignty and behave in a manner that would not make any party, whether in Senegal or in Gambia, uncomfortable about the presence of other security forces on our soil. Now it takes me, but when I look at what is happening, I realize what the concern of so many of the security people that were on the team that I work with to come up with that strategy. part of what I was asked to do was to look for ways in which they would exhaust all other needs before military action. I had suggested to them that they should include the King of Morocco and the President of Guinea-Conakry, because I had Mr. Jami refer to these two as his in-laws, and I thought that they would be very persuasive if they were included in the negotiations to ask Mr. Jami to leave. And it all turned out well until Mr. Barrow left the Gambia. That was when we began to lose part of authority, and it will continue to do so until we get Mr. Barrow out. Unfortunately, our men and women in uniform will remain unhappy until there's a change in government.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Guys, I tend to give him a little bit more time because he's not present with us physically as well. And of course, when he talks in his area of expertise, it makes sense that we could all pick up on some of the vibes he's sending. Ablai, we want to finish with our journalists. Let's give you another 15 minutes for questions, and then we'll try to wrap up now and leave. Quick, and no pregnant questions. One question and directed specifically to a person. Please. Is it really?
Yes.
Is that your name?
Yes.
Well, her mic, Adam.
My question is drawn from the first session, and it's directed to Mr. Kuran. You have talked about debt and debt management in your previous deliberation. So the country is said to owe 77.4 billion. I stand to be corrected. With your knowledge of debt management, how do you intend to tackle that if you are elected come 4th December?
Thank you.
Yeah, the interesting thing about sovereign debt is sometimes even governments can under-declare, because we know about off-balance sheet as accountants. There are some debts that may not appear in the books. So what is being said around now is what is in the books. How to deal with the debt situation? Well, I did make mention of that. Our president goes around the country and said, I have built more roads and more bridges than Jawara and Yaya. But he never said, I borrowed more money, or I am borrowing more money than each of them, you know, even though they have stayed for 30 years and 20 years. So there are two sides of the coin. He is spending and spending and spending. Obviously, we know the previous government was also spending. The APRC government on the Yaya was also spending. How do you tackle it? You have to contain spending. We have what we call discretionary and non-discretionary. There are certain expenditures you must do. You have to buy medicine for the doctors, right, for the hospitals, and you have to pay the doctors and the nurses and the teachers. They have to be done. But we know that there are so many expenses within the budget. People always make fun about the president's personal budget. For example, how do I solve? I will not be spending that amount of money that the president is spending on fish money. That's one. But that's just an example. This country spends so much on traveling, for example, also. There is business class that has been going on since 2017. You will see a ticket for a minister costing you $100,000. I think that is not necessary. Those are the examples. I'm just giving you examples, but there are so many examples. I gave traveling within the country here of how much fuel they use. New cars every day, nothing is being driven. We thought Yaya Jammeh left about 1,000 vehicles. It seems that Barrow is still buying vehicles. What for? So we know there is discretionary expenditure. That is what we call the expenditure side. We need to boost up the income, which is the other side, in order to reduce the debts. Apart from reducing expenditure, you need to look for alternatives, the efficiency. The Gambia is a tax economy. So most of our income comes from taxes, all right? But without adding anything, I also say I'm the only tax expert among all the contestants for these presidential candidates. So what am I going to do? I understand the tax system. You can reduce taxes if you efficiently collect them. They said the Gambia collects maybe about what, $1 billion or 12 billion or something, every $1 billion or so every month in terms of taxes. Well, it's not a lot of money. You can still increase the amount of tax you collect if you increase the efficiency of your information. The Gambia government cannot even tell you how many people are eligible to pay taxes, how many citizens are there, how many non-citizens are there. So we tell you in accounting, if you don't have your information, they say it's more powerful than the money. If you don't get your information right, as an accountant and economist, I survive on information. If you get the information within the government correct, if you are able to register each and every citizen, 1 million people, 2 million, 3 million people, it's no big deal. China has 1.2 billion people and they know every citizen, not only your name and your surname and where you live, they also know what you do every day. That may be too much, isn't it? But 1 billion people, 2 million, 3 million people, we should get our statistics correct. There is no accounting you can do properly if you don't get your statistics. So I am going to increase the efficiency of the information that the government receives and processes and use to run the country. When we increase the efficiency of the information, we will be able to increase. You saw the Janet Commission. If you saw the Janet Commission, you saw there is so many incomes, so many revenue that the government lost in so many opportunities. They talk about the parastatals here. They are being badly run, my friend. The GPA, the GAMTEL, they are big money losers because they are backed by the taxpayer. If they are losing money, the taxpayer is losing money. The income is going down. If you increase the efficiency of this institution, in the Jawara government, they try to come up with what they call performance contracts, where the parastatals will report to the government based on performance indicators. That was just a starting step. However, in this new government, right, if we are elected into power in December, we will increase information efficiency, increase taxes, and reduce expenditure and balance the budget.
Thank you, thank you. Next journalist.
Now, before I do, let me ask my question.
To who?
I will still go back to Kura. So much is being said about economic reform, direct forest investors to boost our economy. But we forget about what the Wolof will say, Benadom Sikiru from Budongoni Wajura. That's the NAWIC. Our energy sector is not being mentioned in terms of boosting our economy. And I expect direct foreign investors cannot invest in a country which is not fully reliable in terms of energy. Mr. Kram, if you voted in office come December 5th, what are your plans within your first 100 days in terms of boosting the energy sector?
Right. I think the problem of NAWEC is very obvious. Investigations have been conducted. NAWEC is owing millions and millions and millions of dollars. There was something that was reported in the Janet Commission that NAWEC almost brought down the Gambia's banking system. About $300 million, the NAWEC could not pay. The banks were almost going bust. The central bank had to come in to guarantee NAWEC. Well, who is central bank? It's you. Your tax money was used to bail out NAWEC. So NAWEC is such a danger, not only in terms of electricity, but in terms of the financial viability of this country. The only solution with NAWEC is to reform it, and to encourage alternative sources of energy. So many Gambians are already using solar energy. A small country like this, wind power, solar energy, there is too much sunlight in this country. Alternative sources of energy would make the people independent of NAWEC, will streamline the demand that NAWEC is facing. Right now, there is a ship in the river, Gambia, that called Car Power, that is basically the lifeline for NAWEC. So we are exporting energy from another country at this moment, whether you like it or not. That's the fact. So unless you try to reform the country where you have alternative energy, there are 3 things or 4 things that go together in this country that must be simultaneously solved. The electricity, the road and the communication network, and the water system. Every village in this country must be supplied with electricity and water, and must be supplied with an efficient energy and water system. You cannot solve the problem of NAWEC by tickling and dismissing managing directors. It is never a problem. Gambians like to blame the managing director. I'm telling you, the problem in NAWEC is bigger than any managing director, bigger than any board. It's a sovereign problem. It is for the government to take the bull by the horn, to realize that the debt, do you know that the debt, according to the Jamia Commission, that was incurred?
Are you advocating for NAMEC to be privatized?
Well,
what do you think about that?
It has happened in so many countries, but if you are going to privatize it, you must be careful, because privatization has taken place here before, and it only ended up making somebody rich. And in the end, when they realized that he was stealing money in Jawara's time, they tried to detain him, and then he hired a helicopter and left. Do you know that story? It happened here. So I am telling you that you can privatize, but people say in many countries, if you want to privatize now, you have to break it down. Distribution and power generation are two different things. And then there are other aspects of NAWEC that you can. So yes, it can be privatized, but you must know which aspect to privatize, and you must be very careful with it.
Thank you. Thank you.
One question to Mr. Jassy, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Jassy, when you talk about development, we also talk about infrastructure. What plan are you trying to put in terms of infrastructure development, considering the physically challenge may have remained in the country?
All right. Once again, if the only tool you can use is a hammer, you get to see everything as a nail. We have a military asset that is sitting there, starting from with Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, coming to the United States, in Europe. All of these nations utilize their military assets by creating an Army Corps of Engineers. This Army Corps of Engineers are responsible for building the secondary roads, some of the bridges within the rural areas, the health centers, and a host of other infrastructural development that they can do locally without interfering with the private sector. I must make that clear before Mr. Kuran, the economist, jump on this case. I will preserve the private sector, but I will utilize the military asset, train them to become electrical engineers, to become construction equipment operators, to become engineers' aid, to become construction carpenters, and a host of other training that they can do. And whilst they are serving, they will be doing this, they will be contributing towards infrastructural development within the country. And when they have done serving, they can use those skills to actually start a business. And part of my plan is, once you have served in the military, acquire a certain type of skill, when you are honorably discharged and you form a company, the Gambia government will guarantee all former service personnel who are engaged in these skills to have a certain percentage of government contracts. That way it will encourage more and more people to go into these fields and become skillful. When you look at a country like the United States and all these beautiful buildings, they are not built by people who've been to the university. Maybe the only person that went to the university was the person who drew the plan. The people who execute the plan are highly skilled people who actually, in 95% of the case, serve in the US military. They come out as skilled workers, continue to contribute towards national development. This is what we must do, use the military whilst they are in active service, and still continue to use them once they retire from the military. Infrastructural development would be two-phase. One, the secondary part would be under the military, under the part that deals with structural development, infrastructural development, the Army Corps of Engineers. The other part would be the private sector that, of course, continues to employ a lot of people, and we don't want to interrupt that as well. But they will be working together to serve the Gambian people. This is the best way to move forward, because we must understand that we don't have the money to pay contractors to do all of this. For instance, all of the feeder roads in the country could have been given to the military. How do we do this? Once we train the military, we bring back what is known as the Public Works Department. Each region will have its own regional public works department that will be made up of civilians that work under the governor's office, but they will also have a military attachment that will also be engineers that will work for developing infrastructure within the region. Once every region has the development that it needs, the nation develops as a whole. This will definitely bring economic growth. It will make life a lot easier in every aspect for every Gambian. I will say it again, let us begin to utilize our military asset instead of just letting them sit there and not being active in any way, shape, or form. Once we come up with this idea of creating this Army Corps of Engineers, you'll be surprised how many of our development partners will be willing to come forward to help us set it up and actually give us the equipment that we need as a start. And also we have so many people within the private sector, such as staff construction and geo construction and all these other construction companies that actually have people who have the skills that could partner with the military and start training them in the use of this equipment and some of these construction techniques, so that they will become more and more productive, the nation will benefit, they'll benefit, and we will be on our road to development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we now do just 2 questions and then we'll end this, please? I would like you to decide about 2 questions.
Yes, so I have 2 questions for Mr. Kura and 1 question for Kitab and Jen.
Prioritize. Let's use 1 to 1, please.
Okay, let me direct my questions to Mr. Kura. You talk about creating 500,000 jobs, right? And I want to ask, how are you going to create these jobs? And what are the key and major potential job creation means and areas in the Gambia that you're going to tap in?
Thank you. Did you say you were going to create 500,000 jobs?
No, I didn't say that. I did say that we are going to mobilize 500,000 young people. All right? And the purpose of that was not right initially as a job creation means. To create jobs in that sense, to see it as job creation is just to say, to put them out there and give them salary. No. First of all, what is the problem of the country? We feel that the country has to be built. So what Change is saying, if you want to build a country, you need a core, a skill core, meaning a group of people, young people in the country who have the skills. Now, there is a symbiotic relationship that is working here, right? We want to build our roads. Look, you have to look at what is happening right now. Who is building the roads? They are foreign companies. You want to build the bridges. Which bridge is being built by a Gambian company? They don't have the skills. You have to bring people from outside to build the skills, to build the bridges. The Singapore Army, for example, right, is able to mobilize young people that can build a bridge over the Singapore River in 24 days. So they have so many bridges on the Singapore River, built by whom? Singaporeans. So to have the money, what our people have been saying to us since 1965 to 1994 to 2016, people were out there celebrating $1 billion coming. But that is not the theory for development that has developed any country in this world. Tell me one country in this world that has developed just like that, with foreign money without domestic skills. So what we are saying is that development has to be internally generated. Get your people prepared. Now, when you get them prepared, the jobs will create themselves. Because what I'm saying is, I talk about relevance education. If you mobilize 500,000 young people, you are not going to ask them to become political science, sociology, or economics. No. Hand skills, my brother. Hand skills. Hand skills. We need how many people are graduating from University of the Gambia with civil engineering degree, or electronics engineering, or medicine? How many? Few, if any. So there is something that is lacking. Taiwanese and the Singaporeans build their country with technical skills, so we need technical education. Only the government can mobilize that. All the private institutions, including my own institution, could only limit ourselves to those skills that do not require so much investment. Technical skills require investment. So there is a process that is taking place. Where will they work? Now, my key job point, if I am to answer your question, is housing. Housing.
Thank you. Housing.
Yes, because 100,000 houses we mentioned, sir. 100,000 houses, those boys and girls that are going to build those houses will buy those houses. The wealth will be, it's a cycle that you create wealth with. They build the house, you pay them for the labor. They buy the house, they bring their parents to stay there. They live in the house. That is how you build every country. We don't need a new formula.
Thank you. The formula is that. Last question. We'll do the last question.
Last question.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Jassy.
Mr. Jassy, are you with us? Yes.
Okay, yes, quickly. Over the years, we've seen many young Gambian ladies have been trafficked to the Middle East and sold as domestic slaves. And according to the U.S. Department of State 2021 Trafficking in Persons report, Gambia is ranked tier number 2, meaning we've not been doing enough to eliminate this. Trafficking in person. What and how can you address this problem in your first 100 days?
All right, thank you very much. To do that, we have to strengthen the immigration department. And to strengthen them, we have to take away some of their responsibilities and further focus them on enforcement. Enforcement is what is lacking. And again, we'll have to come back to the issue of corruption. There are times when officials who are paid to protect these people actually receive bribes and look the other way, and these things happen. I have been within the international community in the Gambia, and one of the greatest concerns for most of the embassies from especially Western countries is that the Gambian government is not serious about prosecuting people engaged in human trafficking. And this is the greatest disappointment that they have of the borough government, which is also part of the failed security sector reforms. My reform package on that is this. I will create a new department on the interior called the Passport and Civil Registration Directorate. I will remove passport issuance, aliens cards, and all these other documents away from the immigration department and give it to a new department that will be issuing agents. The immigration department will only be enforcement agency. That way, we are freeing up a lot of extra officers in order to engage in enforcement. But before you send them out, you have to make sure they understand that they are given the training, and in giving them the training, you need to make them understand the effect that that has on humanity when you sit back and allow human trafficking to continue. Once they grasp that understanding, they begin to use their powers that are given to them to do their job, to do it better. Again, when we come to the point, there is a failure in enforcement. We have all the laws, we have everything that we need in place in order to do this, but we must say that it is unfortunate that the borough government do not seem to have the political will to do anything remotely related to reforming our security. And as a result, we continue to suffer. Our women are being sold into slavery now. The children are dying in the seas. The young men are being raped and murdered. Homes are being broken into. Traffic is a mess. Nobody can go anywhere on time. There is a host of things that are tied to security sector reforms. And that is why I keep saying we need to go back and do that. You need a president who understands the importance of security sector reforms. And I am the candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jase, and thank you, media persons here. Mr. Kitabu will give you 3 minutes for closing statements. You may speak in Mandinka, Manjago, Jola, Sarahule, any language you so choose to speak, but the closing statement must be limited to 3 minutes, and it must be all-encompassing, and you say your final goodbye.
I wouldn't do justice if I don't address one sector, that is my own sector, because I'm from the arts and culture sector, because if you look at things, that sector is, the creative industry is booming right now, but actually our ministry totally forget about us, and it's something that we will address if we are elected into office, because today we have lots of creative artists in the Gambia, and that is gonna help the youth to acquire jobs, because today you have arts generally, you have artists, you have actors, you have actresses, you have comedians. The industry is big, but it's even very, very hard to monetize your own YouTube platform in the Gambia here. All those things need to be addressed. You look at it, even the tourism and culture now, culture is even abandoned. So that is something that it's a problem, and Gambia need to sell its culture outside. So we believe if PDP is elected into office, we look into that area too. It's very, very important. And my last words are, mbe mobe ten lamen bejan mbafula la baraka bake kafuta jankasi kal namoy akumata bake yinem politiko man ka jafiroti amanke nendirti amanke kabula nyola politiko mu nyinati yemen soto moli yew foye wala kumata ka nyone kabula nyola because bi nyimbanko mu bele tati mo kilin tante ndu nata da nyato ndo nata da nyato namu ta ko ma fanan tollem oto katara tele to katara Facebook oto kabula nyola at the end aldo bulo di la nyola ka ko nyoy ko ha politiko le mu barande mu Gambia din kelenati watara ali mo jamabe banda ali men ku yandi wo mu kulati mi alo ko is a problem di ko jeexale si olof rek di tentu ñëpp di yo salaamu kawla ko di tentu ñëpp avec di gërëm ñëpp di wax ñëpp ne daal mbégte nañ trop pour taxaw fi wax ne luñ leen amal as candidates. I thank you all. Allah baraka ba ngeen tam comedian so I still do comedy. So Allah baraka ba.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kurang. 3 minutes. An area that has eluded us during this debate is healthcare. So you may touch on that if you have any plans for the health sector. Why are women dying when giving life? Why is it that when you have minor ailments, you don't get treatment? That's an area that is of concern. So maybe the remainder of you should also touch on those areas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drawe. Memobe Chantula, Memobe Jaira, Mangi Gerin. For all the listeners, I'm very pleased. If I said anything, so again, offend anybody, I'm very sorry about it. Gambia is facing election, which is critical. 2021 December is very critical for all of us. Mo mbelo la siata, but mo siata nyama mo te keno la kilim. Tuwa mo ka nyama easy ta. Politician sina no janna aya ko ala fayne. Mbe airport ol lolay ala fayne. Mballa silol be dala ala fayne mbe nyimbe gal. Ndefe o man important. Ci man lu gëna am soxla moy waaji lan la defon bala mo la téréw. That is what is important. Secondly, as we are facing it, this is not an election about the past. Among the category me alonko, nyanda mo le compensate lala because of something else. It's about banko vitamin tole for the next 10 years. Nyanda banko gila jumale la me alonko, ni la ta ila jar jarol jibe. Ay tandi mo la ko isi banko samanole for the next 10 years. Kuma jamal le pota kabri 2016. Bari mo man tara carte fay kam patio e. Ngo ma jele president kala patio bay le fo man ki jam. President kala patio sindi la red card dia la fo man ki jam. Pota fay carte fay patio le ban fo ya fay president ne. Ye carte fay president ne. 2021 is a very critical decision. Mol ka foko alna badi mfasal. Umar muslime ate Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam abota Quraish le ataka Madina amuta nan Quraish abadi me yalon ko mantara to nyata mandi kam ay kanate sai ko men ko banko mo len ko la ko na friends ole ni ta ko kam mo len no ma katun ko ndem siwol di tela bite o dam man yati ne yen no ma su feke ne yang ma to pandi ño boka het gacha rek mo la ci fek parce que yaage topa yoon bo xamne Rasul daf andutal Rasul gis nañ ko fi not only in the Gambia gis nañ ko fu nekk so it is very important important na pour nit yi ñu xool candidate bu nekk lan mooy jaar-jaaram man maa ngi laajte réew mi because feel naa ne what is been happening since 2016 même be ke kan 2016 makati bayo wala be caring politico tambita ko nga experience otole nene ni masa kunda man do ko ke isa ko mbulo nota je comme account rolete anu nga kisi rokel yim banko ko dole mu problem woti anu president ne nyanta kala je me yalon ko atene ne nola poto gambian kol aga nañ foo xam ne place boo xam ne ñëpp war nañoo xool ori baro mun tumale suwokuta mool ma ñoo suutee mool ye ñoo suutee le saa nde mool men ka kuma fula ko ani kuma killing mo manke killing I feel I'm consistent luma waxoon démba moom laa nekk di wax tey moom laa nekk di wax ëllëg salaam aleykum
thank you so much Mr. Jeng
li ma def rek mooy commencé la gërëm yow Haruna ak sa team bi you know pour plateforme bi nga créé nii pour jox Gambian si you know pour ñu ubbi seen bët da pare ubbi seen noppa ñu taataan da pare déglu pour xool ñi nga xamante ni ñoom ñoo laaj réew mi naka lañ leen a gàddoo fan lañ leen a yóbbu buñ leen fa àggee naka lañ leen fa bàyyee te defe naa plateforme bi ñun ñëpp nangu nañ ne plateforme bi xam-xam la ak plateforme la boo xamante ni képp ku toog fii tey di ñun panélistes yi yëpp defe naa buñ ci jàngeewut kon am na lu des ci ñun ne koo xam ne réew daf la ñor bu dee déglu nga li fi rot ci xam-xam defe naa bu dee amoon nga sikki sàkk ci jubluwaay bu dëkk bi di jublu defe naa fu mu nekk nii xel dina commencé dal ne boo xoolee ñi fi toog ñëpp you know ay ndaw lañ you know ba pare tamit kilifa bokk suñ biir ne soo xoolee dëkk ay ndaw ak ay kilifa buñ nekkee benn ñoom ñoo dee mën a yóbbu réew waaw nekk njiitum réew nag doon na mbir moo xamante ni mbir mu jafe la léegi ñu ngeen sàkku ñaan ci ñi nga xamante ni ñoom ñooy audience yi kilifa diine yi kilifa aada yi ne réew mi toll na ci level boo xamante ni soxla na ñaan naka noonu itam ñu demonstrate responsibility ne élection du xëccoo waaw ne lépp lu ñëw xëccoo fii yàlla daf ko joxe ba pare waaw élection lan la képp ku nekk si ñu jóg samp seen dënd laaj réew mi ñi nga xamante ni ñoom la ko yàlla tooxal seen xol yi ñu jël ko jox la ko ne yàlla ci faa toog tànn na ko ba pare so ñu ngeen ñaan élection bi ñu ànd ci ak sago ñu ànd ci ak dal ñu xam ne réew mi ñoo ko bokk gannaaw élection ñun ñooy dajee ci jàkka yi ñooy dajee ci cooj yi gannaaw élection ñooy dajee ci takka yi ñooy dajee ci ngénte yi gannaaw élection ñooy dajee ci marché yi gannaaw élection ñooy mayente doom ñooy sëy ñu ni neen suñ biir moo tax lépp lu ci waaye di wax na ko seetaan lépp lu ci waaye di def na ko seetaan this is not a competition waaye lii synergie la waaye tey boo xoolee lii Cheikh naka Jaase wax kitaabu lu mu wax suma mbokk bi kuram lu mu wax ak lépp luñ fi teg defe naa xam-xam bu leer la te defe naa lii sax tontu na ñi nga xam ne ñoom ñoo doon wax ne ñun dañ jóg rek pour ut tur defe naa li fi rot tey affaire bi leer na man di lii dee musuma koo gis in the annals of history of this country waaw di la ñaanal yow Haruna you know yàlla mu yokk say fan you know may la wér gu yaram di ñaanal panélistes yi tamit you know yàlla sàmm ñu aar ñu ne géew la boo xam ne yombut waaw yàlla mu yombalal ñu ko ci zahir ak ci baatin waaw naka la ñu itam supporter si fii képp ku nekk am na foo far waaye gis naa ni képp ku nekk mu ngi ànd ak sago affaire bi tey na dal na te am nañ ci jàngat waaw dinaa ko teg suma loxo te pare tamit wax nga ci mbiri health care waaw foog naa suñu health care system bi li mu soxla rek mooy ñu góorgóorlu ci standard ci race ba pare ñu take care of our health personnel ñu jàppale leen so that's just dafa soxla leadership waaw te leadership moom dafa am lu bëri lim laaj buñ ko joxee rek problème bi ñooy wax nii yëpp dafa dal di yomb jërëjëf.
jërëjëf thank you Mr. Jaase.
jërëjëf Mr. Dramé bu nga andi ka wax ci health care bi ba pare ma soog a tëj again soo seetloo suñu health care system bi mi ñu wax ne suñu yoo xale yu jigéen ñi ngi ñàkk seen bakkan ci lopitaan yi ci something loo xam ne lii dafa normal comme jur doom lii dee xew mooy ne duñ dee am primary care services primary health care services moo du dee am hospital si dañ ko ngeste de workload dafa heavy so pour nga wàññi workload bi ci hospital si ak health care centers yi su ko defee ñi nga xam ne ñii seen li leen feebar bu leen dal mën nañ koo faj te du jaar ñu dem lopitaan loolu mooy primary care léegi naka la ñoo defaree primary care bi man léegi damaa delluwaat back to suñu military because si military bi dañoo create an army corps of health technicians. These health technicians dañoo use mobile health units ñoom ñooy dawal health unit bi dugal ko ci villages dugal ko in every corner of the country di joxe primary health care services loo xam ne lii nii ñoom mënuñ koo faj dinañ ko refer to the next level which is the secondary health care boobu moom mën nañ ko ebal ci health centers yi su dee mënuñ koo faj dinañ ko ebal to the next level which is the tertiary health care where you have the hospitals at that level nag dañ foofu la government bi war a partnership with the private sector yi nga xam ne ñoom ñoo amee jumtuwaay ees yi nga xam ne moom la ñoo jëfandikoo ci health care dëkk yu mel ni America nguur gi moomul hospital bi nit ña ko moom investors ya ko moom li nga xam ne lii nii yow soo ki nga xam ne ñu jógee Gambia di dem di fay Sénégal pour scan su amee machine bu ko scan Gambia mu fay moo ko gën a muy fay pass di dem ki nga xam ne moom machine boobu government bi mun na ko indi partner ak moom mu toog Gambia nga xam ne ku soxla scan bi government bi na def tuuti yow nga def lu ci des ñu fay ko nga am sa scan ñu mun la fay health care service bi dafa am 3 levels primary health care services secondary health care services and tertiary so what primary bi nga xam ne moo gën a am solo dañ koo jébal ko ci loxo militaire bi nga xam ne dañ leen a train as registered nurses health technicians and from there you develop them become doctors nga xam ne they can continue to serve even after they are out of the military because once again my experience in the United States most of doctors in our street they work in the US military loolu mooy nga xam ne dama continue to advocate utilizing our military asset in every aspect of development in the country. It will work. Gannaaw loolu Mr. Drar maa ngi lay sant di la gërëm ci this brilliant idea bi nga indi and man sant naa yàlla ne I have made history because of such efforts. I am standing here in the United States of America participating in a presidential debate that is taking place in the Gambia live. This shows when we come together to do things how we can easily change our condition from what it is now to what it can be or what we want it to be. These are the high standards. My colleagues register on the stage. I have nothing but respect for these people. The only one I knew before this was Mr. Jen, whom I not only respect but admire and recognize his contribution towards me when I was in my tour, leading us in prayer. And when I listened to this other, the two guys, I'm losing track of the names here. This is nothing but a wealth of knowledge. This is nothing but a wealth of knowledge. I can start and tell you today, right now as we speak, the 4 of us can form a government. There is enough knowledge on the stage to move this government and we should do that. Thank you.
That is probably where we should have begun to, in fact, look at synergy. Since we're in coalition talks all over the country, if NPP and APRC could come together, I do not see any reason why a Fati, Quran, Jen, and Jazza coalition cannot happen. Maybe you should be talking. Who knows? It's a possibility. We don't say no. This is an interesting year. It's a very interesting year. And this year also, well, you see. Yes. So that's also something. The center de gërëm ñëpp ñu fi teewe tey ak ñu toog si kër yi di ñu seetaan si ñeneenti koñi àdduna yëpp ne liñ fas yéene mooy yaatal géemi politique bi. Gambia war nañoo mun a am ñuy mun a waxtaan ñu ne neen politique warut a nekk mbiri xaalis ki am rek moo mun a dem di gisanteeg ñëpp dafa war a nekk yafi waxtaan ku nekk dañu war a wax léegi lu leer fan nga toll suñu réew mi buñ la ko dénkee foo ko jëmee foog loolu leer lii moo tax ñu ubbi géew bi nii ku bëgg a réew mi nag te man koo yore kooku xaalis war nga tax lii tax mu dellu gannaaw si mun a yore réew moo tax laajuñ fi kenn dërëm pour ngeen jóg waaye ñu ne ngeen waxtaan ak Gambien yi ñu fi nekk ak ñu fi nekkut ñu leen xamutoon xam leen xàmmee leen ràññee leen foo leen jaar si réew ñu xam ne kat kii mu ngi nii am na ñuy bind si Facebook bu tey di wax ne ah man kii de naw naa ko am na suma carte yéen xëy na gisaamu leen loolu waaye ñu ña ngi koo waxtaane réew lii moo koo doxal foog ñu waxante dëgg foog ñu teete wante ñu jàppante loxo ñun yëpp ñu bokk benn jubluwaay benn Gambia la mënuñoo am ñaari Gambia di leen jaajëfal bu baax kontaan nañ trop di wax nag pour mu leer Essa Mbaye Fall ak nitam ñi bind nañ leen laaj leen ñu ñëw ñu ne pare nguñ dafa am yeneen yu ñoo def ngemba gi daal foog naa la ñoo takk mu gën a diggee buñ pare xëj nañ ñu wuyu si docteur Amadou Kanté itam woo nañ ko waxtaan nañoo ak moom it mu ne daal affaire si daf ko xala suufu parewul bu pare nañu woy li tax maay wax li pour mu leer rek bu ëllëgee bu ñu xam ne bàyyi kenn gannaaw waaye nag mënuñoo forcer kenn ku ñëw ku ñëwul nag yaa mën ko ñëw wala yaa bëgg la ñëw duñ ci mën a doon rek mari soxna nga xam ne moom kenn rek mooy jigéen si ñuy soxla lu dund fii woo nañ ko waxtaan nañoo moom mu ne mu ngee dox réew mi jigéeni réew yi ñoo ko soxal fu mu nekk ni amul aajo bi pour waxtaan ju mel nii ñu si àll ñu bàkk nag ñu wacca ko moom it mu dem banque nag jotoon nañoo waxtaan moom nangu woon na sax dina ñëw waaye tey gis nañ mu bind si Facebook bi ne moom kenn prépare wut ko waxuñ ko luñ doon nar a waxtaanee xamul sax fan la lii di nekk moo tax mënut a bokk waaye nag lii mooy mbir mi woo nañ ñëpp ñoo xam ne xam nañ leen Papa Dieye Fall géem nañ luñ mun pour jot ko mënuñ ko jot mënuñoo jot ay nitam loolu moo tax xëj na moom mënut a teewee di leen wax jërëjëf Media Gambia wane ngeen seen bopp 2017 ñëw ba tey rajo yaa ngi yokku télé yaa ngi yokku online yaa ngi yokku newspaper yaa ngi yokku ñu ngi liggéey xamuñ ban secteur moo doxul biir Gambia waaye media bi dox na ñun ñoo ko wax ñun ñëpp ñu ngi def suñu liggéey parce que suñu liggéeyaa waral lu mel nii lii ndaje media la musuta am bu lay njël benn yoon si réewi Gambia te ñun media bi ñoo ko def war nañoo mën a am lu ñoo ndamoo réforme yi ngeen a wax daal na réforme yu bëri media réforme nag soxluñ ko parce que media bi réforme na boppam ba pare jërëjëf
waaw xam naa lu mu wax loolu nekk na lool parce que fu nekk nii it's high time ñu xam ne media reform ak yeneen sonut ko parce que media moo liggéeyal boppam ba pare ay sa tu man wax naa ko gannaaw rek kenn moomut Gambian Talents xam nga beneen talent o beneen TV waaye Gambian Talents moom askan baa ko moom lépp loo xam ne suñ ko laajtee askan bi dinañ si gis seen boppa tey ñu bari dinañ si jàngee dañooy dem ku laajte ko kon nag ay sa tu debate bi tey bi am na solo ñu ne coalition talk dafa mel ni parti yi ba ngeen try pour lëkkaloo te it ñoom it ngeen tamit lëkkaloo neen ma xool rek xaw ma noo ko gisee parce que Jeng wax na ne gars yi jamono ji waxtaan neen ñoom it neen kon coalition dina bari to other political leaders yoo xam ne ñoo nekk si biir Gambie bi kon jërëjëf Aïssatou Koli jamono ji nag Haruna wax na lu am solo mooy nekk na ñi rek leen wax ne dañoo am ak gaay debate waaye ñeneen politicians waxtaan nañoo ak gaay ku mel ni Banki but unfortunately Banki nag ñëwut mu ne parce que PPR ba pare xamutoon lan la gaay di waxtaane and I think it's high time ku dëkk bi tam ñu jox ko serious people because at this present moment ku la call mi ne la dama la invite for a debate su la kooku wutee topic bi or agenda bi or anything yow am nga a role to play so lii dafa wane rek ñun suñ preparedness as a society suñ preparedness as Gambia and then the other thing moo nekk it is good ne gis nañ these three politicians ba dama dee wax rek debate bu nekk dafa war a am koo xam ne moo lead debate bi and I said here I want us to be specific I want us to talk about naka lañ gisee ñi nga xam ne ñoo doon debate si yow kan nga fa ne moo lead debate bi kan nga fa ne moo mun debate bi because am na ñoo xam ne tey suñ debate benn pare kenn bëggut a even seetaan.
Wow, you have put to a very funny situation. But then, I think today I will go with Dr. Kura, Dr. Alaji Mamadou Kuram, and also Mr. Tamsir Jase. I think yes, especially Alaji Mamadou.
Why Mamadou?
Penmore Physiotherapy and Rehabilitation Clinic is the first of its kind in the Gambia. We have inpatient service and outpatient services. Penmore admits patients and they have intensive rehabilitations. That means treatment 3 times a day for 5 days, from Mondays to Friday, and on Fridays they go to their families to spend time with them to have family. Outpatients come on regular appointments, probably 2 or 3 times in a week for treatment. We treat patients with arthritis, with back pain, stroke patients, fractures or after fracture operation, paralysis of all types, and we do treat both young and old patients. Penmore Physiotherapy gives quality physiotherapy treatments to Gambians because we are qualified physios from different parts of the world.